Zack Snyder's Rebel Moon is due out just a few days before Christmas on Netflix, and the director's science fiction endeavour is the first of a two-parter, beginning with part 1, A Child of Fire. I'm yet to talk about Snyder's new film, and if you've been on my channel for a while, you'll know that I really enjoyed the director's work in the past, especially with what we got for the director's cut of Justice League. Now, when it comes to his new film Rebel Moon, everything we've heard about the movie, whether it be the huge ensemble cast, the people working behind the camera, or what we've seen visually from the multiple trailers, it only fuels my anticipation for it. While we know what makes a Snyder film distinct, it'll be interesting to see how the filmmaker applies his aesthetics to primarily the sci-fi genre, and in working with Netflix, it clearly shows that he has a lot more freedom to build the world he wants to show on screen. So in this video essay, I'm going to be discussing why Rebel Moon is exactly what Zack Snyder needs, and giving you an idea of my overall anticipation for the upcoming project. Before I get into it though, if you want to keep up to date on any of my future content surrounding Snyder's latest movie, then don't forget to support this upload by giving it a like rating, subscribing to the channel, and turning on your notifications. But without further ado, let's dive into my initial thoughts for Zack Snyder's Rebel Moon. So the trailers for Rebel Moon, Zack Snyder's new sci-fi epic hitting Netflix in December, has many expansive alien worlds, lightsaber-inspired swords, and more that would make you somewhat think it's loosely connected to the Star Wars franchise. And while Snyder and Netflix aim for Rebel Moon to be the start of a brand new property, there's a reason for that inspired comparison. The director has said many times in the past that his new sci-fi universe was originally conceived and proposed as a Star Wars connected project that would give the franchise a more adult direction following the reaction to the prequel trilogy in the early 2000s. Disney's purchase of Lucasfilm put a stop to that, and Snyder has taken elements from that original idea he had to redo this story as its own thing. Snyder said in a previous interview, "A Star Wars movie was my original concept for it, and I was also inspired by Seven Samurai, taking all that to space, R-rated, with no returning characters." The journey of Rebel Moon is one that promises a sprawling and epic storyline, focusing on a young woman who is recruited to fight back against an empire driven by greed, but then it goes further down its own path in the aim to avoid franchise fatigue, and has the potential to tap into that current desire for epic science fiction storytelling. So you get a sense from those words that there is this influence of Star Wars, but that Snyder intends to push his idea across in its own mature direction. And coming off the back of projects like Dune, The Creator, and other sci-fi films that have more mature elements to them, it does present an opportunity for the director and Netflix to have their own version of that. Zack Snyder himself is a director that, for one, has a distinct visual and narrative style, and whether he's made superhero movies like in the Snyderverse and Watchmen, or other epic tales like 300, he's shown an interest in portraying both brutality and beauty throughout his work. His characters all have deep-rooted flaws, he makes it a priority to highlight their humanity, and critiques the reality of who they are. Take Superman for example, who spends a majority of Man of Steel deciding who he wants to be, as both a son of Krypton and a partial son of Earth. Even though Snyder's films have a huge preference for the visual and use digital VFX in stunning fashion, the characters are the heart of those stories, and without them, I don't think his work would appeal to those that it does in contemporary culture. But given how much talent Snyder has shown in his work as a filmmaker, it will be very interesting to see how he applies his style to the frameworks of a full-blown science fiction movie like Rebel Moon, and one that has been a passion passion project of his for so many years. Of course, the trailers we've seen already promise spectacular VFX, well-choreographed action, and imaginative vistas that combine both a sense of the ancient with the modern. The production design shows a level of rich detail that has been invested into this world, and that signals just how important Rebel Moon is to its creator. It's leaning more into an immersive experience for the audience, grounding enough of it to create a lived-in reality, which, when it comes to sci-fi, is of course extremely important. But what also fuels my excitement for it is that at the front and centre, there is this ragtag group of individuals who are each driven by their own losses or experiences in this new Snyder universe. The trailers put a big emphasis on Sofia Boutella's Cora and immediately show us that she already has a level of understanding when it comes to the enemies that pose a big risk for her and the others she teams up with. It really helps to build on this idea of revenge that the trailers focus on, and hopefully it gives us a sci-fi story that is just as much character driven as it is from a production perspective. If that doesn't excite you, the rest of the cast involved offer up different avenues of exploration, and they are mostly performers that, like Sofia, have had pretty underrated careers thus far. Djimon Hounsou is General Titus, a former general of the Imperium, recruited to lead the fight against that same Imperium. Then there's Charlie Hunnam as Kai, a mercenary starship pilot hired by Cora, and as seen in the footage, he's giving off many Han Solo comparisons, but in a more down-to-earth way. And add on the great Anthony Hopkins, who voices a mechanical knight called Jimmy, who we heard narrating that very first trailer. There's also elements from his other movies in here, whether it be the aspect of flawed individuals coming together, a more religious influence in some of the detailed imagery, and supporting characters and a world that's drenched in both light and dark sensibilities. What really helps Snyder with all of this creative input, and part of the reason why I think it's what he needs right now, is that primarily a project like this gives him that much more freedom to work with. It's no secret that he's had a bad experience with franchises like the DCEU, and some of the films he's directed were, yes, partly a result of his own creative impulses, but then on many occasions there were decisions that weren't fully his own. How the DCEU then morphed after his exit and fell to such a low point just shows what can happen when you don't follow a plan or let a filmmaker direct the universe they pitched, which the studio initially agreed to. Now yes, it can go either way, and there are creative things about every filmmaker that can be improved. But look at the Snyder Cut, for example, and the night and day difference in tone, filmmaking and detail that version gave us when a director was, for the most part, left to make their vision. So a big part of the promise for Snyder's vision with Rebel Moon is that creatively it's an extraordinary opportunity for him to expand his artistic potential and build his own cinematic brand with freedom. Zack Snyder has already shown that he can establish his style of filmmaking within previously established franchises, even when he's restricted at times, and whether you're a fan of that style or not, the deal with Netflix means he can now build and expand his inspired sci-fi property into his own new thing. Rebel Moon 2 is already on the way as well, filmed back to back with the first film, which means that this could be just the beginning of something really special. Zack Snyder developed his career by delving into both the horror genre and superheroes, and if you look at a lot of his work, he's done a decent job of combining the two genres in multiple films. Within this, he's explored philosophical topics and melancholic reflections on the nature of heroes and their realities. Taking that approach and applying it to the science fiction genre is what makes me fascinated by the prospect of Rebel Moon, and seeing how he will bring the grandeur of that idea to life gives me that added level of excitement for it. Netflix have given him a large budget to execute this vision, so we expect that he will attempt to leave an impression on a different genre, just like he has with others. And again, like most Snyder films, not everyone will love that, but those who like his directorial style might enjoy this a lot. My only concerns going into Snyder's Rebel Moon includes one that I think anyone would have about a sci-fi world that was originally going to be a part of a different franchise. And it's not just any particular franchise when it comes to Star Wars. My first concern is that based on the trailers and everything we've heard about the project, it is built on very familiar foundations. Now, as you know, I think Snyder will aim to put his own stamp on it and try and develop the story in a way that feels fresh. But there is this fear that in bringing to life something that was already going to be a part of Star Wars and having visual and storytelling references there that bring up comparison, people may see that as a big fault. I do think there's a potential for this happening, but the one thing that gives me hope that this won't be a problem is that in Snyder's other work, he's done a good job of taking many influences, bringing them together and giving us his own philosophical take on it. Particularly, the third acts of his movies give us something we didn't expect or end on a unique message based on the questions of morality that the projects pose. So while I'm worried about there being a lot of comparisons to Star Wars, I think there's been plenty of time since the origin of this idea for Snyder to adapt and merge it into his own. The other concern I had is one that's more of a smaller issue, one that's more of my own critique, and one that at this point isn't very reversible. And that is that quite honestly, I prefer Snyder's large-scale projects being seen on the big screen, especially when they're big science fiction properties with stunning spectacle. Now, I have nothing against his last film with Netflix, Army of the Dead, and I actually quite enjoyed his first project with the studio, but when you see the way this filmmaker puts together his films and the way he works with digital VFX effectively for the big screen, I'd rather see these projects in theatres. Like with the Snyder Cut, he's showing Rebel Moon around the world in a few 70mm locations, and I'm guessing he's actually shot footage for those screens, so a version of it will basically fill up that entire frame. So to me, it is a shame that he can't have a big theatrical release for this movie, but I guess the plus side of all of this and the positive of working with Netflix on his future films is that he gets that level of creative freedom that I spoke about before. That's why other filmmakers like David Fincher also speak positively of working with them, and I guess for the foreseeable future, Snyder sees that positive too. So overall, I do have a few concerns, but I'm still very excited for Rebel Moon, and when it comes to all the footage we've had of the film so far, it promises a sci-fi spectacle with all the challenging aspects of a Snyder picture. I really hope it all comes together to deliver, and I will definitely be checking it out and covering it here on the channel when it releases this December. But that was my video discussing why I think Rebel Moon is the movie that Zack Snyder needs right now. Again, Rebel Moon could turn out to be either a great movie or one of Snyder's weaker films, but just going into it, knowing what he's been through with other studios and projects, some of the work he's put to screen when he has had more creative freedom, and the promise of the footage we've seen from his new feature, it makes me incredibly excited to see what he's done with it. We'll have to see, but overall, Rebel Moon is probably my most anticipated movie for the rest of this year, and I hope that Snyder can deliver a great sci-fi treat for his fans and fans of the genre. But are you excited for Zack Snyder's Rebel Moon? And like me, do you think the filmmaker could give us an epic science fiction two-parter on Netflix? I'm interested to hear what you guys think, so let me know what your thoughts are down below in the comment section. For much more videos and news on Zack Snyder's Rebel Moon leading up to its release date, then subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications. Also, if you enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like rating and follow me on social media via the links in the description. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I've been Cortex, and as always, make some noise.